Hello, my name is Scott McKeating. I worked on a project called the EMS Health App. I was the sole developer on the team. Well, a team of one person, me and myself and I. The reason why I chose this application or this use case for the project was that I have a clinical background as both a nurse and an EMS provider. I'm an EMT and I actually teach the EMT course at the local community college. And one thing that I always stress with among my students is you get a good history of a patient, and you never know if the patient's mental state is reliable, or if they give you the full information, or if they can even remember everything they've taken or any conditions they have. So I thought having an application developed that a patient could use, and they could log in and they can show all the list of medications they had, the history and vital signs, information relevant to an EMT provider or EMS provider, EMT or a paramedic who's responding to the person. They're the first healthcare provider they see in an emergency situation. So having that information up front and available makes it a lot easier to get that history, and saves time for the EMS providers. That was the thinking behind this project. How I implemented this project. I deployed it in a GitHub pages. It's a static web page. There's no data is stored in the application itself. It's all pulled down through Fire APIs from a Fire server. The project status: I completed all tasks in the project. I used authentication with a EHR vendor. I used Epic's OAuth authentication to authenticate as a patient. I also used their patient data their test patient data to simulate, to show what it would be like for a production patient. I did all the front end development, used JavaScript, CSS, HTML, and some Vue JavaScript framework. Everything I set out to complete is done. The only challenge I ran into recently was that the Epic Fire server was offline, so I needed to develop. I was trying to develop another Fire server to use. So I was focusing on trying to connect to Cerner, but the Epic server became available again, so I was able to use that. A follow-up item I want to go with is to expand this down the road to also include other EHR vendors, so Cerner, Allscripts, Meditech. That could be a place where this could be expanded to use more than just the one EHR vendor. But I just used the one for now. Most of the research I had to do was just pretty much, a lot of it was trial and error, but it was the FireScript Java client that I researched and saw how to make the API calls, and then, like I said, a lot of trial and error, a lot of looking through logging stuff to the console, logging stuff to the display, and looking at the resources that were presented, and going back and forth with the HL7 Fire documentation, and looking to see what the resources were like and how I need to manipulate it with JavaScript and then display it properly. Alright, so on with the demonstration. So, like I said, deploy this to GitHub pages. So anyone, and it's publicly available, so anyone can go to my link, smckeating.github.io, click on the button to launch the Epic authentication. Like I said, I'm using Epic's test patient, so the Epic has a few test patients credentials we can use. I'm just going to use this one, Fire Camilla. Put in the user's credentials, click sign on, and I get presented with the authorization or access approval that the user would have. So if it was a real person logging in with their application, they'd be granting my application access to their data. Okay. This is just the questionnaires as a developer, an application developer, I answered. They can continue on that. And then this is the actual pieces of APIs or pieces of data that you're granting access to the application to. And it's only set up to have the authorization to access that for 1 hour. So I'm going to click Allow Access. And right here, as the patient, it loaded pretty quickly, but you saw that the patient, as the patient's app was loading, as the information was loading, there was a loading message page. And it's just some basic information about the patient: name, age, gender, weight. I chose weight because a lot of medications are weight-based, so you need to know the patient's weight in kilograms, so it's presented in kilograms. Primary language, because if you don't know what language they're speaking, at least you can see what language they speak, so you can get an interpreter or try to get an app to help interpret. Allergies, those are important because you don't want to make sure you don't give someone a medication they're not supposed to have. Click on problems. Problem list will come up. This patient only has only one problem listed, but a lot of patients have multiple problems. So you get a history of their medical problems or medical conditions that they have. Might not be the reason why they're out, that they call the rescue, but you at least know what their medical history is. Goes back with medications. A list of the patient's medications that they've been prescribed would come up here. This one just has this is just a birth control medication that this patient has. And then vitals, I picked the most recent vital signs. I picked 5 sets, so you can scroll back and you can see there's five vital signs. And if you look, there's a couple different weights listed, because weight is captured as a vital sign in the fire data, fire resources. So as EMS provider, you take vital signs. You always find out about patients' medications, what their allergies are, any problems they have, because you want to know what's going on with them today, and if some of the history could be relevant to the patient. And that's basically what this application does. It's not too detailed. I mean, not too detailed, not too in depth, not too difficult, but it just puts the information in the hands of the EMS providers when they need it. And like I said, if there was an error encountered, or if that 1 hour window would expire, you would encounter an error in the application, and you'd be presented with an error message, and you'd be brought back to the main login screen. It would give you a link to it, and you'd actually have to enter in and log in, and be brought back to this main authentication page. As far as future work, like I said, I would maybe expand this to other EHR vendors, other fire servers you could authenticate with, because right now it's limited to Epic and Epic patients. And that is all I had for the demonstration. Thank you. This is actually a very interesting project. It may be built on a lot of the information a lot of the skills I developed was stuff that we did in labs, and this project just was a natural progression of that and built on that. And having this in the Agile framework was very helpful too, because then you have the 2 week sprints. It allows you to kind of work on a project like we do in the real world.